love your overalls, by the way. So
anything in an overall form works really well.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm gonna let people join in,
Yeah.
but I forgot to say, Liara, that the best way to talk on this, and
Just
even though we're live, is to look at me through here as if you're at your hairdresser.
Okay.
I think the hairdresser
That's a really
good one, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't move your head and you're still talking to them, and so it's easier to just. So I'll look at you through here, and then you can look at me through there, so it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So, sorry if we are coming off a little orange. Something is going on with the lights, and I can't tell if it will come off orange or whichever. But at least we're like really bright.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Mistress Lucy Sweetkill. For those of you who don't know me, I'm one half of the La Maison de Rouge team, and this is the La Maison de Rouge Periscope that we host every Monday. Today, and I'm gonna let, I'll let Liara introduce herself and all that stuff, and but I wanted to first note, for those of you who are going to have questions, we always do a Q&A at the end, so if you guys can please wait to the end, write your questions down, because I actually might ask Liara a few things that, she'll answer. And then so remember to do that, and then what else? Only respectful questions, so no show us your feet. We get a lot of that. We are not sex worker monkeys. We are not just gonna dance for you here. And then I think that is all. So I will kind of start it off with, I use the term she, but I know you may not use that term. You might not use that identifier. So can you introduce yourself, Liara, as your name, pronoun, job titles, and any other self-identified titles you'd like people to know you as.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Liara Roux. I use whatever pronouns. Some people call me he, some people call me she, some people call me they. No one's really used other pronouns, but I would be open to it. I'm a sex worker. I do both in-person sex work, and I also do porn. I do live streams sometimes. That's another form of sex work, I guess. And I also do a lot of organizing around sex work stuff. After Patreon started kicking people off, I did a lot of work around that, just getting media attention, talking with the CEO about what they can do to make their platform more friendly to sex workers. And after SESTA FOSTA passed, I've also been doing some organizing around that as well.
Cool. And I think that's how we got connected in a lot of ways was, I think a lot of us kind of started to come together during all this, the crapshoot, the political crapshoot that's happening.
Yeah, it's awful, and the effect it's having on people's lives is completely catastrophic. But it is one of the pros, if there are any, is that it has sort of brought the community together. And I think a lot of sex workers of different types are realizing that stigma affects all of us. And so even people who aren't, prostitutes, as the SESTA FOSTA law says, everyone's being affected by the law, so everyone is coming together.
Definitely. And we'll touch definitely more on your organizing, because I think that's really amazing. So I want to first talk about, we always like to get the history of you and your sort of sexual exploration, so people can get an understanding that poof, you didn't just become, a porn producer out of nowhere, that there is definitely an evolution that happens. So, and then obviously your own sexuality. So let's start with kind of your own sexual exploration. So what were some of your, always, because you identify as kinky, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I always start off with this question. So kink and BDSM come to people in two different ways. They come initially with a non-sexual experience, and then one, of course, during a very sexual experience and sexual exploration. Could you tell us one of your first memory of each?
Cool. Yeah. I think kink has always been sexual for me. I don't know if I have a non-sexual kink experience. Actually, like, it always like turns me on. I think the first time I like remember getting really turned on by it, I was in first grade and I was doing some Star Wars role playing with some of my guy friends, and they were all like good boy Jedis, like, and I was the evil Sith Lord. And I was like mind controlling them and turning them against each other and making them serve me and like worship me. And I was so into it. And then like I was laying in my bed that night just like thinking about what I had done, and I was like, oh, like, you know, I'm feeling really like tingly down there, like it feels good, like.
So you would say you masturbated at a really early age?
I didn't masturbate, actually.
Or
I like explored down there, but I don't really masturbate that often at all, actually. I masturbate if someone's watching me. I'm very, like, it's very rare for me to get off without anyone else, like, participating in some way, because for me, it's really about, like, showing off and, like.
So do you think your exhibitionism started when you were younger, like you loved people watching you? Because I would say that's a non-sexual kind of kinky thing that it starts off at a young age, right? Where you kind of like people watching you, or you like, you know, like peeping toms, right? So I was definitely not an exhibitionist, but I was always a peeper, and it wasn't about watching people have sex. It was just watching people do things or have arguments. It didn't matter, like things I wasn't supposed to watch. And I think that led...
Anything transgressive.
Yeah, so I think that kind of led into, you know, my type of, like, sex work in a lot of ways. So you always kind of like to be a bit of, like, being watched when you were younger.
Yeah.
Like, in general.
Well, I don't know. I think only in sexual context, really. I guess I like performing sometimes, but I don't really like people looking at me in general. So don't.
So your first experience was this role play, which is a pretty awesome role play that we could also do now, people. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I want to see have you done a Star Wars like themed?
You know, I
like porn?
haven't. I probably should. That would be so much fun. Yeah, I would love. I would just like getting like some like evil Sith outfit.
Yeah.
And then like
seeing who you. I could definitely see that. I'd watch it.
Yeah. Nice.
So when was your very first sexual kind of kink experience?
I think that's the first, like with someone else. Or
yeah,
like,
with someone else. Where
okay.
It was obviously like you understood it was sexual in nature.
Okay. I mean, what counts as kinky? Like I've always, like all of my sex has always been. Well, now I've gotten better at like being gentle with people during sex. I would like bite people so hard that they would bleed often, like when I was first having sex with people.
That totally counts.
Yeah, yeah. Just like scratching people, and I really like the combination of like pain and pleasure, and I'm definitely very sadistic. So
you don't seem like you'd be sadistic.
I don't.
Yeah. So would you find yourself? Would you say that you don't really have vanilla sex in your personal life?
I do sometimes.
Okay.
I think part of me, when I am having more vanilla sex, is often like holding back a little bit. Because consent is obviously very important to me, and there's times I want to explore something sexual with someone, and I know they wouldn't be into pain, so I don't go there. But I think it's something that like if everyone involved was into it, I would probably do something kinky every time I'm having sex.
Prefer.
Yeah.
So did you realize the things you were like being kinky, you know, as you were like sexually, you know, your you know, your growth, your sexual maturity? Did you ever feel like it was quote unquote weird? Did you ever have shame behind it? Like, what did that feel like and look like for you?
I don't know if it ever felt shameful to me. I think, well, one thing I did feel a lot of shame about, I think, was like my incest fantasies. Because I was like I have actual brothers and sisters, and I have, like a mom and a dad, and so I was just like, oh, does this mean that, like, I actually want to have sex with them? But then the idea of, like, actually having sex with them wasn't a turn on to me. It was just the idea of having sex with my mom. And so, or someone who is a mom.
Like a mother figure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I felt like sort of worked through that. Nothing, there's anything wrong with fantasizing about having sex with your actual mom, or if you're both consenting, having sex with your actual mom. Like, I would love to meet someone like that, you know, who just like
interesting
has sex with their actual mom. That would be a good three-way.
I find like a lot of sex workers do have incest fantasies.
I think most people have incest fantasies.
I mean, they have talked about it psychologically, why you know, that feeling, and when like kids are separated by their birth parents, how they fawn each other because it's like a pheromonal thing and a psychological thing as well, where you want to like, you feel safety with something that's close to you.
Yeah.
Which is always interesting. I don't know, I feel like it's the one fantasy I don't have.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the incest fantasy is like a thing that I'm like super removed from. It's never been like a turn on for me. Like, I have no issues. I know a lot of people, but it's just for some reason has never been a turn on for me.
Yeah.
I have my other fantasies. So do you think, did you have a very supportive, like, did you have a good support network which allowed you to feel, you know, comfortable in your sexuality? Was that, or do you think it was a very natural thing for you?
I think it was pretty natural for me. My parents were very conservative and Christian, but yeah, for some reason I just I think they wanted me to feel shame about having sex, but for me it felt like this amazing thing that was really cool, and so I was like, why would you be ashamed of that? I remember, I think being on the internet also helped. I remember one of my earliest internet friends, I was pretending that I was much older on the internet at the time, and I became friends with this, I mean, who knows whether she actually was or not, but she's like, yeah, I live in San Francisco, I'm a pro-dom, like, you know, my husband is like a submissive, like we have amazing sex together.
Where did you guys meet on the internet?
It was some forum, I forget which forum it was.
Okay.
I was on a bunch of forums.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not related to sex or anything, but she was just talking about her life. And I was like, that's really cool. Like, that sounds like the dream lifestyle, being a pro-dom and just like beating people up for money. And
did you have already an understanding about sex and kink? Like, did you have, like, you know, how did you kind of discover it beyond like the actual vocabulary and all that stuff?
I always have been very into like doing research on the internet, and I read so much. And when I was younger, I read a bunch of books, especially. And I was lucky that the library that I grew up with had a lot of like queer erotica in the teen section, actually. Like, the librarians were definitely like cool
Kinky.
people. Yeah. And so like yeah, and I was pretty young when I was reading in like I think I might have been in like second grade or something even when I started reading the books that were more intended for teenagers. And so I think I was exposed to a lot of really cool literature.
That's awesome.
Early on, yeah.
So then, you know, that's great because so many people are surrounded by like, And I think maybe this is a very generational thing too. It's like, I think nowadays with the internet, it's easier at a younger age to find connection with people like you and ask about it, compared to like not be able to talk about it, not be able to ask about it, not be able to find anybody who's into it. So then you kind of like hold it inside, compared to like, you're like, oh, I want to figure this out, so let me just Google it, or let me just talk to somebody, and it becomes easier to be like, oh, I'm not weird.
Yeah. No, I think the internet gets a lot of hate, but I think especially for like queer, kinky people like me, it's just been invaluable for like connecting with, because we definitely are minorities, and so being able to connect with those groups, when you grew up in like a small town that's relatively like isolated or something, like I can see that being transformative.
Yeah, definitely. So, how I now want to kind of get into your career, basically, and how that started. So, what was, what was that like, basically? How did you get into sex work?
So my career path was pretty interesting. I first worked in fashion. I did an internship, and I was doing pattern drafting, and I also did some design work. And while I really enjoyed the actual work, I feel like the culture was really toxic. A lot of the people I worked with were just like really angry, like intense people who would take out their anger on other people. And then
Very true. I worked in fashion too.
yeah, it was just like not for me. And then I moved to San Francisco and I started working in tech. And I had a really negative experience. My coworkers were just like misogynistic, and the company culture was just like not great. And I had all these friends who were pro-doms or who worked in porn, and they seemed to really enjoy what they were doing. They had like a bunch of independence and free time and made good money. I was like, why do I have a boss? Like, I want to be the boss. Like, I want to have my own business and work when I want to, and make like money that like doesn't go to someone else. And so I decided, I didn't quit my job. I was like, I'll see how I like it. And I did what a lot of people do. I went on like seeking arrangements. I went on a couple dates. I was like, hey, like, this is something that not only can I do it, I actually enjoy it, and it's a little like exciting and thrilling for me. And so, yeah, once I figured out that I liked it, I was just like, took a bunch of photos, made my website, posted my first ad, and ever since then, I've just been completely loving it.
Yeah. So, how long ago did you start?
I started 5 years ago.
I feel like a lot of people go through that of like, you do, I guess, vanilla jobs, right? And you start to see like, what the fuck? In a lot of ways, and that was my path too. And I did the same thing you did. I had my regular job, and I started to try this other thing out, and then was like, leave that other job and do,
Yeah.
And so for you, so then you got into, how did you get into porn producing?
So I got into porn producing probably largely because I'm an exhibitionist. Honestly, it just really turns me on to know that people are watching my porn and like jerking off. I'm sure like someone's jerking off while watching this video right now.
Oh, definitely.
And that makes me really happy. Yeah, so it was just like, and it's a way for me to be creative and artistic too. Like, I think I really want to explore just like different ways that people have sex, and like I want to, because I'm in control of like the casting and everything, I want to have sex with people that I'm actually attracted to and sort of work with them to create, you know, it's still going to be manufactured. Like, it's not going to be completely gonzo. But I want it to be sex that looks beautiful and also feels really good for me.
Well, that's, I feel like I was going to use, like, you film very pretty sex, you know, and I think it's and it has definitely like this, you know, very love story feel to it, which I really like. And I guess many people, what's the category now? Porn for women or something?
Oh God, honestly,
I'm like, so I don't know what, I guess.
People who call their porn feminists, I often like side-eye it a little bit.
What are your feelings on that?
I prefer like ethical porn. I like porn where people are paid, you know, as much as anyone else working on set. I think that's really important. You know, you shouldn't be paying your like video person more than you're paying your performers because they're just as valuable. I think sexual labor is often undervalued. And so I think you should pay performers really well. And you should have the type of sex that, like, you know, like, whatever the fuck you want. Like, it's work, you know? Like, and I know people who have sex that, like, isn't necessarily super what they're into, but, you know, they're doing it for work. They can still be, like, plenty of people do things for work that aren't, like, empowering. But, you know, just, like, let people have their own boundaries and, you know.
I like that term, ethical. You know, and that I think should be used more often. Like, I'm very, like, I don't know the porn industry at all, and I've interviewed a few, you know, porn producers and porn performers, and so it's really interesting to hear, like, that industry is just, there's so much going on in that industry, and so many changes. I mean, I think changes in a good way, though, would you say? Like, more people doing independent work and more people talking about...
I mean, I do think Pornhub has had a really negative effect on the industry. I'm hoping that, you know, it's just really frustrating that this Pornhub, which owns so many of the production companies,
are they the Amazon of porn?
They're worse than Amazon because they control the creation of it, and these production companies aren't selling as much because it's going to Pornhub and being pirated. It's like this crazy money-making machine. Pornhub owns the production companies, which are like, oh, sorry, we can't pay you performers as much anymore because our things aren't selling as well. And then it gets pirated to Pornhub where they're making a fuck ton of money off of it from the advertising. And so none of that goes to the performers. And now they're starting to have things where people can it's sort of like YouTube, like you can upload a video and you'll get paid a certain amount of revenue. I actually put my porn trailers on Pornhub, and I've been paid out by them. But it's not an ideal situation by any means.
What do you recommend would be an ideal situation?
I mean, I think Pornhub should be broken up because it's a monopoly. And you know what they're doing. If it was happening in any other industry, I think, well, I don't know. Congress has gotten really bad about enforcing, like,
everything's
or I guess the courts have gotten bad about enforcing a lot of these monopoly laws. But it's so egregious. I think people get a little titillated by the fact that it's porn and just have trouble thinking logically about how to enforce these laws. I just imagine some, like, old white dude being a judge and being like, oh, like, Pornhub, and then, like, he starts thinking about sex and gets, like, really distracted.
And then he's like, I can't. So, you know, now, so you've been producing porn over the last, like, few years? 2 years? Or something?
I think, I'm not sure how long it's been. It feels like a year, probably.
And then when did you get into sort of sex work activism?
I got into sex work activism, I think it was October, after Patreon started shutting down the accounts of sex workers who were using it to sell their pornography. And there were, many prominent people on their site who were selling porn, and it was just sort of like, you had to have known about this before. Why are you now sort of selectively enforcing it? And unfortunately, we sort of lost with Patreon. They weren't willing to fight for sex workers. They decided that sexual content on their site, like videos of like real people having sex, was just not going to be allowed. And it's really depressing.
Why do you think they started doing that? Because I know this was because you were very big on Patreon, and you were really like pushing this, for them to change some of their policies. Why do you think it was happening in the first place?
I think they were getting pressure from a lot of angles. Probably the credit card processors, which have, like PayPal, for example, which they do use to process credit cards, just blanket bans sex workers. So even if a sex worker isn't using PayPal for sexual services, even if it's just personal use, like paying a hairdresser or something, her account will get shut down because they just don't allow sex workers at all. And so Patreon was sort of unique in that they allowed sex workers, didn't allow porn, and so they got an exception there. But then PayPal started noticing that they were having some actual porn on their site, and then was like, hey, you have to crack down. And instead of fighting for us, Patreon decided to just sort of roll over for them.
Which is interesting because people pay for porn with credit cards, don't they?
Yeah, but they use different credit card processors. So, for example, on my site, I use CC Bill, which I think it only, it's a much higher fee, just because they're able to get away with it because we don't have many other options, and they have to do a lot of work making sure that it's a problem with the credit cards themselves. Like, the credit card companies are like, oh, I remember it's just like they have these really intense, arcane rules about what's allowed and what's not allowed.
So I usually don't, for those of you out there who are asking questions and joined in the middle of this conversation, you can ask questions at the end when we have a Q&A. But someone made a comment that I really, I would definitely love your opinion on, which is free porn, right? Mm-hmm. Where someone was just like, thumbs up, 100% free porn. What are your feelings about that? What does that mean to you?
I think it's just another example of people not paying for sexual labor, I think a lot of people feel entitled to sex, especially men. And so they're like, they don't want to pay for their porn. They're like, this porn should be readily available to me. They think women should have sex with them, like, anytime. They don't want to have to work for it at all. And I think people don't realize that, sex is something that you should be working for. You should be working to make sure that you're turning your partner on. You should be working to make sure that they're comfortable. And it's not bad to do this work. It's really good. And it'll probably result in you having better sex, and having better porn. But a lot of people don't value it enough.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because everything else that is pirated, people have issues with, right? Like regular movies, there's all these laws behind it, and it's much hard, but porn is so easily pirated and put out with no issues.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue, too, is that a lot of production companies that aren't owned by Pornhub are a lot smaller. I remember hearing about this lawsuit that kink.com was having with Pornhub, where kink.com was sending them like takedown requests, I think, and Pornhub was just like, we don't care, like, we're just gonna leave these up, like, try to sue us, it's not gonna matter, we have so much more money than you, like, we'll just drag this on forever. And it was really fucked up, like, they were, you know, completely taking advantage of the situation.
Totally. Yeah, that really sucks. So then with your activism started because of Patreon, and then as you kind of went deeper with that, where did that go? Like, it obviously continued.
Yeah, so I had sort of been staying away from activism because I guess I was worried about it affecting my brand. But I think at that point in my career, I had gotten to the point where most of my clients were people that I enjoyed spending time with anyway, and they liked that I did activism and was like really cared about politics and wanted to be politically involved. And so I had this position I was in where I was very privileged. I was getting more than enough like inquiries than I could take, and so I was like, I'm gonna try to give back to the community that had really supported me when I started. And so after Patreon happened, that was like a good way for me to get started, because it was something I could really take action on. And then I connected more with some of the sex work organizing community. And then after Sesta Fosta passed, I connected with some more people, especially people who organize in New York. And it's honestly, it's been really amazing. A lot of the people who do organizing are just like really impressive, and it's an honor to work with them.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot. I had just posted something that you guys did with the Reddit, and I wasn't able to like tune in and see what was going on, but it got a lot of not only viewers and a lot of coverage. Can you tell the audience about this, this Reddit event that I think would be really interesting?
Yeah, so the Reddit event was an AMA. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Reddit, but they have this whole subsection called a subreddit that is devoted to AMAs, and it stands for Ask Me Anything. And so people have been asking me to do an AMA for a long time. They wanted to hear more about my work, about my life. And so I've been putting it off. I was just like, I don't know, like, how important this is going to be. But after Sesta Fosta happened, it seemed really clear that the world needs more education about sex work. And I also really wanted to center the voices of people. Like, people assume I'm a girl. People think I'm cis. Like, I'm conventionally attractive. I'm skinny. Like, I'm white. I make a lot of money. Like, I'm very privileged. And my voice isn't going to be as important as the voice of someone, especially, like, women of color, especially trans women, really need to have their voices heard. Because they're the ones who are actually going to be really affected by laws like Sesta Fosta. And so I figured it was a chance for me to amplify some of those other voices. I think I only ended up answering like 5 questions or something. I tried to sort of take a back seat. I like did the organizing stuff, but yeah, I think letting other people have a turn.
Because it's still up, right? They don't take these things
Yeah,
out.
yeah, you can go read it. There's a lot of really cool answers there.
Cool. So do you feel that, not only sex work, with everything that's going on, with obviously our political situation, do you think that, sex work, but also alternative sexuality and BDSM and stuff are kind of going towards a better place?
I definitely think so. I think that people are learning more about... I think that there's a lot of information being shared. And while some of that information is harmful, and false.
Yeah.
I think the internet has definitely spread some of the alt-right ideology, but you can say that about any technology, like the printing press. Like who knows if the Nazis, I mean, like any shitty information can spread around at any time. I think people overstate the importance of the internet in the rise of the alt-right, but I do think it has been really helpful for people in queer, sex worker, or other minority communities, just connecting and learning more about other people like them, and learning how to like, I think kink is one of those things where just learning how to talk about it is really important, because it is, you have to be really aware of other people's boundaries, and like, I know very few people who do kink who just have at some point not like accidentally like pushed someone too far, or like did something, and just learning how to talk about that and like make sure that you are like being ethical and like really taking care of the people that you're playing with is really important.
I think kink and BDSM teach really good communication skills, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
and there are moments of like something kind of goes wrong, and it's about reflecting during those bad moments and being able to communicate it with each other and find a better way to communicate to each other. And I think those sort of like challenges help you build better communication skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think nobody's gonna be perfect, no one's ever not gonna make a mistake, but it's how you handle after the mistake. Do you really like put in the work to take care of your partner and improve your communication so that it doesn't happen again? I think that's what's important.
I wanted to go back about a comment I made about not realizing you're such a little sadist. So what are some of your personal interests in play? Like, what are some of your interests and what are some of your limits?
I'm open to just about anything that'll get people off, as long as I feel I can do it safely.
Yeah.
So for example, I'm not going to go around suspending people with ropes because I haven't been trained in that.
Yeah.
If I got training, sure, I would absolutely do that. I'm kind of a service top. Like, I enjoy being mean to people, but I really like doing it in a way that gets them off. So I'm like, just tell me, like, what you really like so that I can do that for you and like take you to this really extreme, insane place. I really like when people are open to like being pushed too, to see like just how much they can take. And when I really like being submissive sometimes too. I do it very rarely, and mainly only with people that I really trust. But yeah, I think having been on both sides, I've learned that I like kink as a way of like taking care of people, like helping them work through something, or just giving them this really beautiful, intense experience. I think I also really like ruining people. Like, I'm just like, you're never gonna have sex this good ever again. Like, how does it feel? Like,
Where? I always like to say this. This is, I like creating an experience where on your deathbed, I'm one of the top 10 things you think about.
Oh, yeah.
And when your life flashes before your eyes, I'll be one of them. I think that's definitely a powerful thing, right?
Absolutely.
What are your limits? What are things that you've come across in your sexual explorations that you're like, I'm not into that?
As a submissive, I'm not into a lot of things. I don't like the idea. I don't really want to like eat anyone's poop. Not into like bloodletting.
Yeah. Scat is definitely a lot of people's limits.
Yeah, there's other things that I feel like are dangerous that I'm not into. I feel like I'm pretty, like, open-minded in general, though. Like, anything that isn't... Like, I think, like, part of the reason why poop is really gross to me, too, is because you can actually get really sick from that.
Yeah.
So, anything that comes with, like, a really intense risk, I'm just like, I don't know if that's going to be worth it to me to experience this. When, like, I know I could get off just as hard if someone, like...
Doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
I think it's more, for me, about just, like, sharing something really intense with people.
Definitely. I'm going to allow people to ask questions while I ask sort of our fun questions. So if you have a question, you're welcome to ask it. I will be picking out ones that are asked respectfully or ones that haven't been answered. For those others, I will be ignoring you. So we always like to do a vices and virtues question. And so this can be in any aspect of your life. This could be in your sexual, aspect. It can be a personal thing. What are some of your vices and virtues, Liara?
I guess my virtues, we'll start off with those. I'm not very selfish in bed. I'm very good at getting other people off. Communication
really
is pretty
it.
important to me.
Yeah.
I think I'm a pretty good communicator. Vices, I can be pretty demanding. I don't like to settle. I really like when people go out of their way to, like, do things for me. And if people don't do things, like, just right, I get pretty upset. Which I guess for some people could be a virtue.
So would you say you're a bit of a perfectionist?
Yeah. And especially when someone is doing, like, service work for me.
Yeah.
Like, I want them to do it really well. And I think for some people, they just want to, like, give me, like, a foot massage or something. And I'm like, it has to be, like, the best.
Most mind-blowing foot massage.
Yeah.
No, don't give any of these dead fish foot massages, people. All right, someone keeps on saying very low sound. Nobody else has said that, so maybe your own stuff, so can't help you there. If anybody... So you always get the craziest comments and the annoying ones.
Yeah.
For those of you guys who actually have questions for Liara, this is definitely an opportunity to ask them. Respectful questions will be... all right, what kind of camera do you use?
I use a Sony A7S II. It has really good low light, so it's nice for, like, those moody, romantic, candlelit porno type vibes.
And you film your own, right?
Yeah, I work with a videographer, or I work with two main videographers. One is actually my wife, Ashley Lake. She does a lot of video shooting for me. She is also my main photographer.
It is up.
And then...
That's the most.
My other videographer is my lovely friend Jessica. And yeah, both of them are really fun to work with. My wife, obviously, we have had sex before. It's shocking, I know. But, so it's fun to, like, have someone that you have a little bit of, like, sexual tension with in the room while you're having sex with someone else. So that's another fun element to the
Someone
situation.
asked about art, but I'm not sure. Do you do art?
Yeah, I haven't done as much art lately, but I used to do a lot of oil painting. I was also really into bronze casting. I think I'm probably going to take some art classes soon. I've been wanting to get back into it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Bronze casting can be Like, can't be that easy.
Yeah, it was so much fun. I want to. It's so difficult to find like a bronze casting studio though.
Yeah.
I think I might try to find one.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? How does sex work affect your relationship with your wife? That's a good one.
So at first, my wife was just like a little jealous. She was like, like, I'm really worried that you're gonna like fall for someone else and not want to be with me anymore. But we already had an open relationship, and so we had already talked about jealousy stuff a little bit. And I was like, like, honestly, sex work is something I feel really good about. And I was like, I think, I'm happy to work with you on your jealousy stuff surrounding, like, my personal partners. But I was like, when it comes to jealousy around work, like, I think that's something that I want you to work through on your own, because having to manage your emotions about it and my own emotions about my work, it would just be too exhausting, I think.
Definitely.
And so, yeah, she's done a really good job of just, like, processing all of that on her own. She doesn't really burden me with it. And I think she's gotten a lot more comfortable with it. I think just, we've been together as long... We were together before I even started doing sex work. And so I think for her, it's something that she got used to.
Yeah. Because it's definitely different when you're in a relationship before you start and when they've met you. So that definitely...
Yeah, we made it through the transition, which, I think it just...
Did you do any reading or studying about sort of even like poly just as a way of, as kind of a way as a little bit of a learning curve type of thing? Because are you in a poly? Do you guys have a poly relationship?
Yeah, I actually have like 3 romantic partners right now.
Okay. So was it something that, with her being a little jealous, did you guys, read up on things?
Yeah. So I always knew I wanted to be in an open relationship. I had read a bunch about it on the internet. And then when we started dating, I was like, look, if you want this to get serious, like, you should just know I'm probably never going to want to be monogamous. And she was like, okay, like, let's see if that's something I can do. And she read Opening Up and The Ethical Slut.
Yeah.
And also read a bunch of other stuff that's sort of around that.
Yeah.
And she was like, all right, like, I think we can do this. And then as soon as we moved in together, we started seeing a couples therapist, and our couples therapist actually worked out of the office of Dossie Easton. And so having a couples therapist, especially as I was starting sex work, who knew a lot about polyamory and ethical non-monogamy, and also knew a lot about sex work, I think she may have been a sex worker herself, actually, that first couples therapist. She definitely gave me, like, dom vibes. She had, like, really tall heels, and she would always wear all black and, like, these very, like, form-fitting dresses.
You had a dom fantasy about her, didn't you?
Yeah. But yeah, I think it was just super helpful. Honestly, I think everyone should be in individual therapy, and every couple should be in couples therapy, because I think if we hadn't had that, there's probably a very real chance we would have broken up as I started sex work.
I was going to make that comment. I think it's really important. You don't have to go to therapy when you think a problem is right there. It's actually really good to do it preemptively, to have a time and sort of set a time to, like, it's self-care for the relationship.
Yeah. It feels really nice to be like, hey, we're so committed to each other that we've dedicated an hour or hour plus out of the week just to talk about our relationship and make sure everything's good and okay.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. So for those of you out there, do your research. If you can't get into open and poly relationships, and think that...
Also, I think a lot of guys think that if they get into an open relationship, that, like, these are, like, hetero dudes who are like, hey, like, if I'm in an open relationship, I'll be able to, like, fuck all these hot girls, and, like, and then, like, they do it, and then all of a sudden, their girlfriend or wife or whatever is just, like, having a lot of amazing sex, and, like, the guy's having a much harder time. And so that's something you should consider before you dive in, is that if you're in a heterosexual relationship, your lady friend is probably gonna get laid a lot more than you are.
I've definitely have heard that, where they're just like, this is gonna be awesome, and then they're like, wait,
didn't really think that
I have a dad bod now, and I didn't make any effort to learn how to satisfy a woman, because I just think sticking my penis in her is all I need to do, and then you wonder why you don't have any sexual partners. Is because men have to make an effort learning to please their partners beyond the insert my penis and that's all I need.
Yeah.
Most cis heterosexual women can't actually orgasm that way by just penetration alone.
Yeah.
And most men don't understand that and don't actually know that. And so that's always interesting, you know. And I find that most women who get into these open relationships because their partner suggested it initially end up realizing what they've been missing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think there's more social pressure for women to act, look a certain way, in the sense that women take care of themselves, you know, a lot of times, you know, they'll do different things to make themselves appear better, while there are a lot of men that don't have that same pressure, and then end up not having to, you know, wonder why these young hot women are not going after dad bod who hasn't made any effort and doesn't give good sex.
Yeah.
Put some effort in. I think somebody asked
I will add, I like dad bod.
Do you like dad?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, muscle boys are fine, but I do like
how do you feel about dad bod that doesn't know how to make you come, though?
Oh, I mean, anyone who doesn't know how to make me come is sort of like...
And unwilling to put
Unwilling to learn, yeah.
That's a negative. Somebody asked, I think, about travel, and I wasn't sure if it was specifically there or in general. Yeah. What's your...
Yeah, I used to travel a lot.
Yeah.
There was one point where I was traveling probably 3 weeks out of the month.
Yeah.
Just touring really intensely. Now I travel more like a week out of the month. And usually, before I was mainly touring, now I mainly travel if a client is flying me out or if we're going somewhere together.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll sort of like coordinate, see people around them. But yeah, at this point, living in New York, I have so many regular clients who live here that it doesn't really make sense for me to tour as much anymore.
So that means come here, people.
Yeah. Come to New York.
What are ways people can, you know, connect with you, check out your website, all the things that are going on, and any projects that are happening?
So I have a Twitter. I also have an Instagram. I also have a subreddit that I post all kinds of stuff on. So those are my 3 main social media platforms right now.
And those are all under the same name?
Yeah, it's all at Liara Roux. LIARAROUX. Pretty easy to find.
And then you have a website as well.
So my website for my in-person sex work is liararoux.com, and my porn website is liararoux.xxx.
Awesome. And then you also have a comic book. Right?
Yeah, I have this really cute, sexy comic. If you're interested in reading about some of my sexual exploits, it's Adventures of Liara Roux, And yeah, it's a lot of fun to write. There's some
is it
freaky shit coming
Is it a
up.
comic book that's based online, or can people actually purchase?
You can't purchase a physical copy yet. At some point I'm gonna put one out, but not yet.
Because that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you guys for joining, and thank you, Liara, for coming on to our show and giving us your journey on both your sexuality and also your work. For those of you who have never joined us before, we host this Periscope every Monday. It's a live broadcast, and we have different sex workers as well as those who participate in alternative sexuality. So please join us every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we hopefully will see you next Monday. Thank you guys. Bye.